let's check out the YouTube. Oh, jeez. I don't know how to change the thumbnail for this because intelligence 100, but you know, gotta do what you gotta do. And I also don't know if I could actually save this video because I haven't done this in a while, and the last time I tried to do this, it didn't save this video. So whatever, it's fine. Yay. Cool. Anyways, welcome. Yeah, sup whore. Alright, so we're doing a little Photoshop thing in my big today because I have nothing else to do, and yeah, cool. A little run through. It'll be fun, be informative. It'll be all of these things. So first thing you want to do is get a background. I chose this very lovely Aston Martin DBS Superleggera, and you're gonna get a photo of your car from automation that best matches the base vehicle. So in this case, this is the best I could do. I know it's not perfect, whatever. I always like to group all my things very tightly together because I am annoying and pesky, and my computer is gonna run at 4 frames per second. So you know the vibe. So first thing I'm gonna do is cut my vehicle out. This takes a few minutes. It's like the most uninteresting part of the whole process. But we're here for the long run, so get used to it. Ah! Didn't focus the car correctly. Never, it's fine. This is also a good opportunity to just cut out any bits that you don't like of your original car. So if there's something here you don't like, just get rid of it. If there are any interruptions during this stream, it is because I live in a house with my parents as a young child. So do please ignore any interruptions. I didn't focus this properly. It's fine. Just ignore it. Pretend it didn't happen. Who cares? Not me. Jesus doesn't care. Feels very weird to do this all by myself. Like, no one's listening to me. No one's talking to me. It's fine. I can answer questions as we go along. You know, that really hurt. And yeah. Keep going around. If I were actually making this a proper tutorial, I would probably skip this whole part. Just like, it would have happened, and then I would have cut it, and then it's been like, oh, that was it. End tutorial. But no, we're gonna step it up. Apparently I don't know how to use the shift key. Alright, cool. You outline the car. I press Control Enter, which selects the car, the selection. Actually, before I do that, I'm also going to, because that's I always forget to do this, and make another path right here. And then this way I can get that little hole where the spoiler is. So do the Control selection, copy, paste, Control C and Control V. Then boom, you're done. No, I'm kidding. And you're gonna align the car best you can. Try your best. I like to align it, since it's easy to move the tires of the base car. It's easier to do that than to like fiddle around with trying to fix the bodywork of the old one, like erasing it. So I like to make this new car from automation line up with the body of the original and not the wheels. Just as an FYI. So like when you're taking the photo, I try to align with the wheelbase and the wheel angle, but when I actually put it in the photo, I kind of like throw that out the window. So we're gonna just label this car as you do. There's something, the one thing that I tend to do that no one else tends to do is I always use the Marquee tool with M, select a piece like this, copy and paste it, and then use the eraser tool to get rid of, to like blend it in a little bit. Well, maybe not like that, but like you don't have to do it this way. There are other ways to do it. If you press J and you get the eraser tool, that's E, J, and you get spot healing brush tool. This is another way to do it. You press Alt and then you could designate the area you want to copy. So like if you do this, and then you could heal this part over here, and you could just be like, whoop, it doesn't exist anymore. It also works. I tend to find that you kind of have to go deep into the car in order for to not like artifact the colors. So that's why I do the Marquee, because it tends to be a little cleaner. But that's just a personal preference. Do what you want to do. I also do the lasso tool. I liked using polygonal lasso tool because it, I don't know, feels better. And then I do the same thing for the back. Get that clout, And then, yeah, just put these here. I always label anything, again, because I'm neurotic. You don't have to do this. I'm just insane and I can't help myself. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is paint the underside of the car. So paint these wheel bells. I'm going to do that just with the brush tool, with B, eyedropper tool, I select the color, paint it underneath. Real quick stuff. 2 plus 2 is 4. Quick maths. And then you so this sets you up later on for when you make the tires the correct size, which is what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to, path tool is like my best friend. I use it all the time. So I'm going to just path this out. You don't have to be super precise about it as long as you're precise with the outer edges, because in the end that's what you're going to see. Like the bottom of the car, don't have to worry that much about it. I like to do my tire separately. So I do the front tire first, and then I copy the rear tire, and then I adjust both. Now, remember, Control Enter, copy and paste. Fun stuff. Love to see it. Do your labeling or don't. Also, don't forget to save your document, because I've had many a time where I've gone through pretty much like half of a Photoshop and then Photoshop crashes and then none of it saves. Truly desperate times, those. Sorry. So now just do your best and to align the tire to the car. Try to aim for the center of the wheel. Should be in the center of the wheel well about approximately. Doesn't have to be perfect. Again, people really aren't going to care that much. People are going to be like, oh, wow, you made your own Photoshop? That's what people are going to see. And then rear tire, do the same thing. One thing you will notice right now off the get-go is the lighting of my car doesn't really match the lighting of the scene. And I'm going to work on that right now because it's annoying me. So my car, you have to compare the shading a little bit. The highlights in the original photo, basically the original photo is just a lot more blue. It's a lot cooler. So I press Control B to get into the color balance settings. Also, just as a completely different, like aside. This is Photoshop. If you use GIMP or Paint.net, you're probably gonna have different hotkeys for these different functions, or maybe you don't have these functions at all, which I'm sure there are alternatives. But I like to use the color balance because it is easy and it works. So I just tuned out a lot of the red in this section. More so, for me, it's a little more important not just to tune the red out, but more to tune out the yellow, because yellow is sort of like what really gets the car looking a little funky and like deserty, but you know. And then I do put some red back in for the shadows, just because this is a red vehicle and I want it to look red. So we're gonna work on it. Will this stream be made public later? I did one of these streams before and I wanted it to be public, and I don't know what happened. It didn't upload. I was very disappointed because I was making the Photoshop and I thought it was good, and then it just didn't upload. So I feel like Ram's freaking out. Why are you freaking out? What's wrong with destructive workflow? I am the destructive workflow. All right. Yeah, so I just did the color balance thing, and now I think it looks too blue. So we're just gonna... So now we're gonna dial down the magenta, I think, with just some of this. Maybe move it a little towards the red. Yeah, that looks about right. Yeah. There's also a little bit of green in there, so I'm also going to like pump some of that in. This is gonna be a very strange looking car at the end of it, let me tell you. Alright, I don't want to focus on that right now because I'm going to freak out, because I wasn't anticipating that to be an issue. So what I'm going to do is path out the interior, the windshield. And then copy and paste. And you're going to put this on top of everything else, and make sure this stays on top of everything. So later on, I'm going to start doing some like shading layers that are going to affect the lighting of the car, and you want the windshield to be all above that, because you're taking the windshield from the original scene, and the lighting of the windshield of the original scene is real life. So if you want it to look realistic, you don't want to mess around with it. You know, just use the warp tool and just warp it around. I don't really have that much shame. I use the warp tool quite liberally. But, you know, some people don't. It's cool. Alright, I'm gonna turn the opacity of this down, and then just trim the pieces that I don't really need. It's better to err on the side of keeping more of the windshield than keeping less of it in terms of the bordering, because it looks ugly in automation, and you kind of want to get rid of that ugliness. So we're just gonna... Oh, that's a little too much. Just gonna pat this out. Then copy, delete. Cool stuff. And then we're gonna do the same thing with the side windows. I'm probably gonna keep the side mirrors here. Normally I would get rid of them, but I think it would look pretty cool. So this window, even though it goes all the way back here, it kind of has like a flying buttress thing. My car does not have that, so I'm just gonna copy the reflective surfaces from the original. So path it out. Again, paths, we love to see them. Side window. Okay, you're probably going to need to do a lot of stretching and manipulation for this, but you know, it's fine. Who really cares? Not me. And then I'm going to use the smudge tool. I put it at a pretty high strength, but don't go to 100 or else it'll just look really bad. I'm just gonna smudge it down. Just smudge it out. And then I also like to, just to make it seem a little more natural, I'm just gonna copy the pattern a little bit and just do a little lighten. Then put it on. And then, yeah. I'm also gonna smudge it out here a little bit. Wow, this car looks very blue, but it also looks very pink, and it feels very strange. All right, and now we're gonna do the same thing that I did with the windshield, which is just to cut this out a little bit. I'm not even gonna use opacity for this. I'm just gonna fully line it and then just delete whatever is there. And then I use Control-Shift-I, and that inverts your selection. So before we only had this one, the side window cut out, and then when we invert it, we have everything around it. And then I delete, and now we have our side window there. So it looks pretty good. Don't forget to save. And then, is anyone watching? 3 people are watching. I kind of like to flip back and forth a lot, just to get a hold of where I am. So next thing I'm going to do is cut out the headlights. I'm just going to copy and paste them onto another layer so I could readjust the coloration of it, because that's what I want to do. I think it'll look really good. Same goes for these, just pop them out. It's a little more important to be precise with these, just because if you have any like weird edges or something, you're not gonna want to see that. Hello? Can I just select this one bit? Whatever, I'll figure it out. There we go. Path tool is just like a thing that I think it's really good to learn, just like how to use it in general. There's a lot of little neat tricks you could do with it to get a good flow with it. So now we're gonna do Control Enter, so you get the selection. The other thing I like to do personally is do Control Alt Shift and then press the car layer, and then if you could see here, whoops, it selects everything that you had in your selection, and then oh crap, and then restricts it to only this layer. It almost works as like a masking layer in a way, but it's not perfect. Not exactly a masking layer, but it's more just for selections. It's really nice. It's easy to use. So I'm going to copy paste, call this one headlight. I guess headlights plural, but whatever. And then what I'm going to do right now, while we're at it, is just try to match the color with what is on the original. A little toned. And then I like to decrease saturation. I also like to use, if you do Control M, you come up with the curves tool, and then I like to just kind of crush it with some saturation contrast, just to make it look a little more glossy, shiny, whatever. Looks pretty good. I think right now we're at a pretty good spot. I'm gonna keep on moving, but I'm just gonna do a little cleanup underneath here. Cool and good. Is someone watching us? I don't think anyone's watching. Okay, next I'm going to path out something for the headlights. I'm gonna path out the daytime running lights with the path tool again. Again, if you don't like using the path tool, or if you don't have the path tool, like don't Don't worry, there are alternatives out there for you. I'm actually, even though I'm actually gonna path the whole shape of the headlights out of the DRL just to make it look a little cleaner. So we're just gonna go around the headlights, and then once you get here, I'm gonna do the other side too, and then just same deal, just path it out. Cool stuff. Alright. Make a new layer, and then make a selection with the Control Enter. And then I like to make a brush, take my brush, and then just draw over it in white. It doesn't really matter because we're going to be changing it later. And then I'm just going to call this DRL and just leave it as a base layer. Right now, I don't really want to work on it. I want to deal with it. I'll deal with it a little later. All's good is good. Next thing I'm going to tackle are some of the reflections, the reflective surfaces that the Aston Martin has that I kind of really want to see on my car. So, main thing for me is this like rear reflection. I think this looks really good, and I'm just going to steal it. I'll take your whole stock. Since this car matches the color of my base image, they're both red, I'm going to also not really change the color of the reflection itself. Whoops. So we're gonna go here. I'm just gonna go ahead and make a whole reflection group, and this, I put the reflection group right above the car group, and then I'm just gonna go right here, plop it in, and then use the warp tool and warp it around a little bit, and then your reflections, they're popping off for real. Again, just try your best to get it lined up as well as you can. You probably won't be able to get it that great. I'm going to be annoyed by this one, so I'm just gonna have to keep going. Alright, cool. Car layer, delete, invert, delete. Alright, so here we have our car and the reflection. So I think one of the main issues is that I just took a really bad face photo of this vehicle, and now that reflection is just gonna like mess up the whole thing because the whole side of the car is frankly beige. It is beige. And I don't know how to fix that without being annoying. So let's be annoying. What I'm gonna do now is take the base red from this color and then paint over the entire side of the car to this color, and then put it on as a soft light, and now the whole side is red. Cool beans. The red on here is also a little bit brighter than the car I want, so I'm going to use this again, and then I'm going to use the curves tool and then just mess with the curves a little bit so that we kind of get a more accurate shade of red here. And I'm going to erase some of the reflection, just do a little cleaning work, a little cleanup work. Yeah, and then doesn't look too bad. I'm also going to add some of the red back into there. I'm going to dull the red down a little bit just because it's a little overbearing. And the next thing I'm going to do is name this red side, and then rear reflection. I'm just going to blend the reflection into the car a little bit, more eraser tool like I did up there. Just a little bit of erasage here, and then blend it in a little more. I'm going to create a shading layer, which I'm going to put above the reflection layer. And this will be kind of like an all-purpose sort of shading layer. Then I like to do Control Car, and which selects the car again. And then shading layers, I always do soft light. So soft light blending layer. And then I sort of just paint on exactly what I want to do. So this is sort of just like a thing I like to do. I do it for the vents too, because these vents are very bright, and this car doesn't really need vents that bright. So I go in with the shading layer, copy the part that I want to shade in, and I do choose black, and then for my color, and then just like shade in the vent a little bit. I go for the pretty big brush size and then go for pretty far, so you kind of get this like faded and more natural feel to it. And I just do this for basically every single one. I'm just gonna fill this in. It's dark enough. Ooh. I'm also gonna mask out this part. So this is supposed to be an indicator, and I'm going to copy this out of the car and then put it above the red, so we gotta get that more natural look to it. Gonna apply the same shading as before, the same everything as the headlights. Alright, and this doesn't look too bad. Again, we kind of want to focus on making everything just look cohesive. That's one of the main things. So right here, you can sort of see just like this entire area is just not lining up that well. So I'm gonna go ahead and just copy this entire side reflection from the original Aston Martin. And we're just gonna get into it. Sorry for that, just had a little interruption. And now we're back. A little bit of this. Basically, if you need an explanation of what just happened, I copied over this side part, just fit it in. I'm gonna do a little more curves to it again, just to match the lighting up. And I darkened this edge with the burn tool at a pretty low exposure. I like to protect the tones, and I like to go for like mid-tones, but you could choose shadows, highlights, depending on what exactly you want to change. And now we got that there. Side reflection. We've got this like weird for body shaping thing going on here. And I'm just gonna go ahead and copy that out. I'm gonna take it out of the side reflection and then just go into the shading layer and then put it in white. Now for the side reflection, I'm going to very quickly take the door handle and copy that out on top of here. And you know what? I'm actually gonna take the center of it out too. So we have a little nice, pretty seamless looking side reflection there. Which doesn't look too bad. It's intricate. This is all stuff, again, this is all like a lot of different things. This is just how I would go through like a full Photoshop. You could have stopped pretty far along ago, but I kind of like to get into it. Door handle. I mean, the basics that you really just need to know is car, put car onto photo, like windshield, side windows. That's pretty crucial. Another thing I'm going to do with the side windows later is I'm just going to give it some depth. It's a little flat right now. I think the shading layer is quite important to the design. It just adds a little bit of believability, and I think it's useful. Speaking of which, I'm going to fill in these grills with the shading layers because they're looking a little bright, and they're not that bright. At least not on the Ashton. So, more fun path tool shenanigans. And we're just gonna whoop. Just gonna copy and then shading. One thing I do like to do is I just like to go in with this and then color it all in. And then I like to go back in with my eraser at a lower opacity, like 50. Okay, yeah, 50, and like a larger brush with a little bit with no hardness, and then kind of just like sort of like not mask out or clean up, but sort of fade the shadow in a little bit. And then that way you kind of get this little more natural effect than as opposed to if you just like, hold on, let me brush it over one more time. If it was just black versus if it was like a little shadowed out, a little bit shaded in, it looks a little more natural, which I like the effect of. And I'm just gonna freestyle this, like freehand it, because I'm kind of lazy. Oh, that's why my thing looks so dark, because it is. Just gonna go over this a little bit. It's gonna be very, very slapstick, but whatever. Was this even on? Was this okay? Now we're good. So now we got a pretty solid design, pretty solid Photoshop work. Again, I think that my main things right now is the side window, which I can add depth to by duplicating it. Just like dropping it down a few. Again, we love to see the Control-Alt-Shift and then masking out that one. Then we get rid of that. Oh wait, no, just kidding. Haha. Get rid of this. So we mask out the original one. So we select the new one, intersect it with the original, and then get rid of where it intersects with the original so that we can darken that piece out a little bit. I just go like a little, I go quite dark, but not too dark. And then we kind of get this cool little three-dimensional effect that I think looks pretty nice. This side shading is kind of intense though. So I'm gonna just go in and I'm just gonna go in and then erase some of this shading because it's a little intense for the car. And then I'm also going to go in with the red shading and then pull some of that out of this whole spiel too. And then I'm also gonna just mask these out of it. So to deselect these parts from my selection, you do Alt Enter, or it should be Alt Enter, Control Alt Enter. Sorry, whoops, Control Alt Enter, and then I'm just gonna delete this all together. All right, no, never mind. Make sure to put your eraser back at 100 so you're actually doing what you want to do. And then, yeah, we got that out of the way. I'm debating whether or not I should steal these reflections, but I think I might just shade that in. So next thing I'm going to do is match some of the lighting from the original to the sides and the back. So again, one thing I pointed out before is that my car is quite red compared to the original. So I'm going to go in with a sort of like bluish, green, cyan almost style color, and then just kind of paint it on just to mute it a little bit. And then just a little bit of this. So we're good with that. Not really much to do there. I'm also going to steal this reflection of the mirror on the Aston Martin for my car, because the reflection and automation is questionable. Mirror reflection. Unlike the other layers, oh wait, no, never mind. I was like, unlike the other layers, I would do luminosity, but since this is over the original shadow layer, I'm not going to do that, because it kind of gets this weirdly weird effect going on. So I'm just going to put it on, I'm going to darken it, and I'm also just going to go in and erase most of it. And there's other bits that I have to get rid of too, which are going to be fun. Just a little bit of this sort of action. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to make it a darken layer, so we kind of get this cooler effect, more natural looking effect. And then I'm just going to paint this over because it looks ugly. I'm actually just going to make a cleanup layer so I can get rid of this whole black reflection altogether, because it does not look good. Okay, and make sure you turn off the shading layer and my red layer so we can get a more accurate color to fill in. And then I'm going to use a little bit of a harder brush so you could get a more accurate crease sort of thing going on. And then once you get here, I'm going to go back to being a little softer. And then take out the reflections too so I can focus on this. Go back to the hardness. Yeah, you kind of have to go back and forth to just like doing the same thing, and then just, you know, a lot of this is just trying out different things and seeing what sticks for you. So for me, this sort of method sticks, but for a lot of people, they're probably crying at how awful and slapstick this is. Like thrown together. Just gonna go with the red, go back with the shading, and go back with the reflections. Alright, and that doesn't look too bad, I think. I mean, this mirror kind of goes out to here, and the reflection kind of only goes out to there, but we won't have to talk about that. I'm also going to add a little bit of black shading down here. And also a little bit of sort of like faux ambient occlusion around the mirrors, just so we could get a little bit of looks there. Alright, we're looking pretty good. And I think this is a pretty good place to be. Save your images. I'm going to copy the DRLs now so I can actually do the daytime running light layer. And I'm going to take the first one, lower it down to like a gray, like a very light gray, using Control U, and you get this hue saturation layer, and also you get lightness. I'm going to lower the lightness down to like a very light gray, go back to my color balance, choose highlights, and then push it to cyan and blue. I'm going to go back into my hue saturation layer, pump up the saturation as much as I can, and then change the blending layer into vivid light. And then what this does is it gives you a more sort of like, it kind of keeps some of the texture of the headlights, so you get a little more of a realistic look. And then I'm also gonna pull that back down now again, and then you put that on top of one of your copy layers, and then I'm gonna use Gaussian blur to blur this out. I'm gonna go 10 pixels. I like to blend this as a hard light, and then also go a little bit darker with this one too. Another bluish tone. I'm gonna copy another DRL because I can't help myself, and then do soft light, and then this one's gonna be an even larger glow, so we get like this triple glow look, and it kind of matches the original. I mean, the original one has a little more of a yellow tone to it. I like the blue hue. It just gives it a more, for me, the blue gives it a more like techie feel, almost like high tech. So that's what I'm gonna do there. Cool. I'm also going to transplant some of the hood reflections onto my car because I feel like it could really use it. So I'm just gonna copy this over to the hood. But just to make it a little more easy than the side one, I'm just gonna do it as a lighten layer. And then like literally it's just those two reflections that are stuck there. Don't have to worry about the rest of it. And then you could push this up here if you want to. I'm going to keep it pretty simple though. Just leave it there. Yeah. And I think that's pretty much all I have to do. Only thing I would do personally is change the wheels. So I can do that now if you guys want to see that. So I'm just gonna look up some wheels. I did this Photoshop on this car a few years ago with a different version of the car, so I'm gonna just use those wheels because I like them and they work and they look cool. But it's also the spider for some reason. All right. But I look for images. I'm using this image is a 4K image, so I'm going to look for something that is big, so I can copy over that pretty easily. So just copy this image onto the new one, or don't, that's fine. Copy the new, just stop it. We're good? No, why is it not copying over? What the hell? I don't want to save it. You could probably just save it and then like spare yourself from this kind of misery, but it's not, whatever. So I'm going to use my elliptical marquee tool to cut out the wheels from this McLaren. I do actually like these SMR wheels. They do look pretty nice, but I'm going to use these anyways because that's what I did. And then I'm just going to stretch them out. For higher res images like this, and since the wheel I'm using is also from a pretty high res image, it's alright to stretch these wheels out, but I would advise against using an image where the wheels are very small and then stretching them out to this size, because then you could really point out like the JPEG artifacting and everything that comes on that one. But this one, you can't really tell, it looks pretty good. So I'm gonna go back to the name, front wheel, and then sort of, again, match up some of the shadows. A little bit of cyan, a bit of cyan actually. And then only a little magenta. And then the other thing I'm gonna do is crush it down because, yep, that looks pretty good. If I do say so myself. Gonna do the same thing with the rear wheel. One little trick that I don't know how many people know this, but I think it's a really interesting, neat little trick to do, is if you press Control Alt and then a tool shortcut, it'll remember your exact settings from before. So I did Control Alt B to bring up the color balance while maintaining my previous selections, and then it pulls up the exact same color selections, and then you don't like worry about like guessing like exactly where it was. Same with this. Super easy, super useful, especially for like continuity's sake. And then, yep, those wheels are on, and I think this is a finished Photoshop, if you ask me. Well, it took me like half an hour. It probably would take you a little longer because I have a workflow like established. But it didn't take that long, and I think this overall product doesn't look too shabby either. So, yeah, thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed, and hopefully YouTube will actually publish this video unlike it did with my last 2 attempts. Alright, thank you.